right. Just wanted to welcome everyone and welcome our audience and introduce you to our special guest, Stel Fine. Stel is a certified inner bonding facilitator and the director of training and expansion at Inner Bonding Educational Technologies. Her life purpose, I love this. Her life purpose is to help people learn how to stop causing themselves needless suffering, which we all do, and restriction, freeing them up to become loving, whole, and fulfilled. She's a dynamic and compassionate trainer, speaker, and psychotherapist with a master's degree in spiritual psychology. Welcome, Stel. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Yes, yes. So we're just going to dive right in. If you could share a little bit of background about your story, tell us who you are, and what inspired you to do what you do and what you're doing currently.
Sure. Well, you've given my title, so that's what I'm doing currently. I get to uh, work with clients and help them learn how to be loving to themselves
Mhm.
and others without giving themselves up. So that's a bit of a tightrope walk, as we all know.
Yeah.
We want harmony in our relationships. We want to get along, but how do we do that in a sustainable way? And the most sustainable way that I know is to really get to know yourself, what your gifts are, what your natural talents and skills are, um, and also just to have a sense of intrinsic self-worth.
Yes.
I know that this is about prosperous moms, and to be prosperous, I think, in any way includes valuing yourself and valuing your gift and what you give the world. And so to be psychologically fit, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically is all really important.
Mhm.
And what I do is I teach people, like I said, to be loving to themselves and others without giving themselves up. I also am the director of training at Inner Bonding, so I train people to become certified facilitators in inner bonding, so
Okay.
they can pass on the gift.
Yeah.
And what we find in working with the way we think is pay attention to what you say to yourself. So is there a part of you that's criticizing you all day long? Is there a part of you who's your best cheerleader? How do you find peace? How do you restore? How do you bring your best self not only to your work, but to your kids, if you have them, to your mate, your larger circle? And one of the best ways to do this is to have really healthy boundaries so that you are fulfilled, you are sourced, and and inner bonding does that in an unusual way. We work with different aspects of ourselves. So you and I, the conscious you and I, we're walking around thinking I'm just me, right? I'm just me engaging with the world. But actually, most of us have an inner critic who most of us have an inner critic who rides us pretty hard
Yeah.
and is a real taskmaster. And then there's our natural self, our authentic self, and um, and that's the part of us who has her passions, her gifts, her preferences, the things that lights her up and brings her joy. And then there's something that we call guidance in inner bonding, and that's whatever your source of wisdom and higher knowing, just that real sense of knowing in your gut. And it's really important to be in touch with that part of ourselves because it helps us navigate our day to day. And so those are the four parts that we work with in inner bonding: the feeling self, which is the natural self, your original self, if you were, the loving adult consciousness, the you and me who wants to take good care of ourselves and others, and our higher self who can tell us what's loving in any given moment, and the inner critic slash ego wounded self, which we really have to watch out for because
Yeah.
it thinks it has to protect, control, avoid, risk, pain, being vulnerable, all those things that make us human and make us our full selves. So this is a long way around to answering your question about why I do what I do.
Yes.
I do that. That's okay. I mean, I just,
You do you.
No, I love it. Yes.
I wanted to explain what that was all about. And now my other cat is making noise. So I am going to have to close the door super fast. This will just.
All right, here we go.
So that's kind of a long way around my answering why I do what I do. When I grew up, I had a really awful inner critic who was on me all the time. And it really can eat away at your self-worth and your self-esteem, your confidence. And I was a very creative, emotional kid. And I was in a family where they were, concerned about grades, of course. And my dad was somewhat creative, but, I was expected to hit a certain standard all the time. And so when I didn't, I felt really bad. And so throughout my life, I needed to learn a loving way of accepting myself unconditionally and being compassionate toward myself and others. So I did lots of fun things. I worked in Hollywood. I was the vice president of development at a television and film production company. My creative side loved that. And I love movies and TV, but really what I love is the hero's journey, how we are the heroes in our own lives. And just like in any archetypical story, we need a mentor, we need a challenge, we need to go through different obstacles to, hit the goal. And I found for myself that inner bonding, which I discovered when I was a client of an inner bonding facilitator, it gave me access to my own sense of knowing, which built my confidence, which allowed me to value myself and challenge the inner critic. And not, many techniques just tell you to, be quiet, to the inner critic. But what I love about inner bonding is we ask it some questions instead. We say, what are you trying to protect me from by telling me, whatever the criticism is? What are you hoping to avoid? Why do you think this will be good for me? And because it always has a really good reason. Unfortunately, it's a part of ourselves who can't evolve. So it's like 4 or 5 or 6 years old. And its view of the world is really very limited, and it's not a reliable source of information. So we learn to not trust it. We learn to doubt it and to question it. And ultimately, when we start to be loving to ourselves and we learn from our higher self or our guidance, depending on, there's so many different words for these things, our own wisdom, our sense of what's true and what's right for us. When we start to live our life in that way, it becomes a sweeter, more beautiful life. We're more fulfilled. We are happier. And because the wounded ego self is trying to avoid pain, we can show it that we are much happier doing what feels right and what feels good for us. And so hopefully, as you get to know yourself and you get to talk to my core self, my authentic self, and find out, what does she want to do? What's the gift she wants to bring to the world? What brings her joy? And I found that what brings her joy and me joy is to teach people how to be compassionate and self-accepting and loving, and to not have to be limited by their false beliefs, which again comes from the ego wounded part of us. So for me, it's extraordinarily fulfilling, and it's just inner bonding is my favorite thing. So I love to talk about it, and I love to teach it, and my love for it, and I guess my expertise in it as well, had the owner of Inner Bonding ask me to become co-director of training first, and then director of training and expansion. So I am on a mission, like you said, Stephanie, to to teach people they don't need to suffer anymore under the very, very heavy critical false beliefs that many of us grew up with. And
Sure.
the messages that are limiting are often the ones that we either got directly from whoever raised us and their biases and what they thought was valuable and what they didn't think was valuable, or we inferred it by how they treated us and how they treated themselves. So
Right.
that's why I do what I do.
Wow, so fascinating. And
And
one,
amazing.
one of the reasons why this is so fascinating is I'm going to share a little bit. I have a background of psychology and cognitive psychology, and Stephanie as well. She used to do clinical work, and she has a master's in social work. And so all of this stuff is like, wow, yes. And if more people get to learn about how to create that inner bonding, this world will be a completely different place. And that's why I was so excited to have you on to speak more about this opportunity, is that it doesn't, the conventional way, I would say the traditional way of handling certain things when it comes to traumas and things like that have always been therapy and all the other things. So to really hear that there's also another way to really help someone heal through their experiences in a very compassionate way is fascinating to me. So speaking
There-
of which,
And there's something in what you said that I'd like to point out directly, if I may.
yes,
I'm going to use the word repair.
yes,
So, you know, in our personal life, in our work life, things are going to come up that are challenging, and we may fail at, delivering something the way we wish we would have, or getting that sale, or what have you. And how we repair is in inner bonding is the loving adult self. This is the main bonding in inner bonding, the loving adult consciousness with your authentic self. So let's say you didn't get the sale. You prepared like crazy. You did a great PowerPoint. You researched the company, everything else, and it just didn't happen.
right,
So the wound itself, the ego wound itself, it's going to want to beat you up, most probably, for most of us, and say, well, you didn't do this, or you should have done that, or you missed this, or whatever. None of which is helpful
Right.
for uh, for our best intentions, are having put our best foot forward. And so the loving adult needs to get in between the part that's saying all these mean things, these criticisms, because it can't help us. All it can do is do its familiar loop. So we have to open our own hearts and be nurturing toward this part of ourselves who's probably crushed. I mean, the word we usually use is disappointed, but let's face it, disappointed is a very civilized word for crushed. So just like you would hold an actual child who went through some difficult experience at school or wherever, we must bring unconditional love and acceptance to the part of ourself that put in this great effort. And regardless of what the results are, we need to value the effort. We need to see the beauty and the natural gifts that we have: kindness, creativity, sweetness, consideration, all these things that really everybody has, because we have intrinsically a loving heart, and that's valuable. That's valuable in the workplace, that's valuable in the home, that's valuable in your community and in your friendships and everything. So if my inner child is upset, I'm going to say inner child, authentic self, they're all words for the same thing. I literally will put my loving adult's hand on her cheek and my hand on my heart, and I'll say, oh honey, I know you're disappointed. I know it's heartbreaking that didn't work out. I know, but I've got you. I've got you, and we'll try again. What did we learn from that? So as long as there's a way to repair from whatever,
Mhm.
we're good to go again.
Yeah.
We're good to get up and try again. Without that, if we just let our wounded selves run the show and go, you messed up, you this, you that, we're going to be scared, we're going to be timid, we're going to be just not whole and not ready to meet the world. So inner bonding is a self-help technique. It is something you can do at 3 in the morning if you wake up in the middle of the night. There are 6 steps, and the free gift that I've offered is a home course in inner bonding, and it goes over each of the steps.
Great.
And yeah, and shows you how to do it. A lot of people do choose to work with facilitators because we like to be accompanied. We want to have a tour guide who knows the way,
Yeah.
who's been in that dark forest and knows the way out, and is a model of compassion and acceptance and just pure presence, really being with someone.
Sure.
And then
And being with someone who has sympathy or empathy or both, right? The idea of peer support.
yes,
And then the interaction too, right?
yeah, for sure.
Huge component of it.
Speaking of a huge component, one of the huge components of inner bonding is our loving adults' connection to guidance at all times. So if someone is working as a facilitator with a client, we the facilitators are connected with our guidance. And not only can we be with you, because pain is going to come up. Step 1 of inner bonding is feel your pain.
Yeah.
Like, don't avoid it, don't run away from it.
Right.
Face it head on.
Right.
And just like in a dream where something's chasing you, you don't have any peace until you turn around in the dream and face whatever that thing is. And so step 1 is to feel your feelings and to take responsibility for your feelings.
Yep.
If it's something that's happened on the outside, let's say somebody you love is ill, then the question to the inner child authentic self is, how can I help you manage this?
Mhm.
And feel the heartbreak and the loss and the grief. If it's something the wounded self is saying, the question that the loving adult asks the inner child is, what am I allowing the wounded self to say, or what am I believing or doing or not doing that's making you feel so upset, anxious, scared, whatever it is? So we take full responsibility for whatever we are causing inside. And 99% of the suffering that we go through as a human being is from believing the wounded self, believing these old false beliefs that really don't serve us.
Right.
Fascinating. Absolutely. And so we have gotten a little bit of what it's like to go through the inner bonding process and really understanding the different components of it. So in terms of wanting to work with a facilitator, what does that look like? How long is your program? Like how someone would begin to even start on this journey of healing themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Great question. So I invite you to the Inner Bonding website, which is innerbonding.com. This technique is created by Doctors Margaret Paul and Erica Chopich. And there are a ton of articles, videos, the free course that you'll have a link to in a little while. All of these are great resources. And also there's a facilitators tab on the menu. So go down to find a facilitator, and it lists all of us with our pictures and our bios. And we're really quite vulnerable in what we say about ourselves on there, so that you get a sense of what difficulties we've come through, to see, who speaks to you, people who want to work with someone who has a really, really strong wounded self. Those people come to me because I talk about that in my bio. I had a really bad one, and it's really, if it was this big before, it's like this big now. And you know, this part of us never goes away 100%. It's installed, but it gets quieter and quieter and less powerful as you cultivate a loving consciousness, and that really starts to run the show. So I would go to the Find a Facilitator page, see which person you're drawn to, and contact them and see some. We also have facilitators in training, and some of those folks might be willing to give some free sessions, you know, a couple of free sessions in the beginning. So it's always worth asking that question.
Okay, that's a good
Amazing.
tip.
So what is, if you have to share one more tip or one more strategy, or if this is where someone can begin, what would that be? Where do I start?
I would say start with understanding that you are exactly as you are for very good reasons, and to embrace yourself right where you are. All of us wish we were, you know, maybe better in some ways. I wish I was more organized, you know, like, you know, nobody has, well, maybe Margaret Paul has everything all together, but other than Margaret, you know, there's usually something that we're still working on. And you know what? That's our hero's journey. That's sacred. So the place where I would start would be to say, honor your life. There's a beautiful quote by Hafiz. He's a Sufi poet, and the quote is, "This place where you are right now, God circled on a map for you." So it's valuable where you are, even if you're in pain, even if you don't see the way through. This is a rich place where you are. And if you can value yourself, if you can learn to have compassion for yourself and to forgive yourself and to understand why you do what you do, and that's one tip. The other tip would be, the part that's criticizing you, that's not you. You think it's you, it's not you. It is an automatic software that is running in your system, trying to protect you, telling you stay down, don't take a risk, you know, etc. It's not you. It's like a hypnotized version of you. So whenever that is running, just know, this will pass, you know, like weather in the sky, this will pass, because my source of knowing, let's say the sun, that's there all the time. I may not see it all the time, but it's there. So that's the tip. That's actually a really valuable tip. Oh, this thing I do when I get angry, that's not actually me. I'm responsible for it.
Sure.
I need to learn why I do it and take care of it and clean up a mess if I've made a mess, but it's not me. Who you and I actually are is, I know this is cliche, but we really are pure presence and love and openness and connection. That's who we really are.
Mm-hmm.
I love
I believe that 100% wholeheartedly, because ultimately we think about it, and I teach this to my clients, even to my kids, is that each and every one of us was born out of love. And so that's all we are, really,
Yeah.
ultimately, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, no, I really so love and admire what it is that you do and why you do it. And ultimately, this is why we're in this together, collectively sharing this type of information, to allowing people to know that there is another way. There is a way to work with that part of ourselves that we're not 100% in love with, but it's about embracing it and really understanding why we operate the way we do. And so I so appreciate you doing the work that you do, creating that impact in the world. And yeah, that's why I'm really excited to share this information with the audience. And I don't know about you, audience tuning in, but I've learned so much about how just the word compassion, it's just really sticking out, you know, for me in his whole conversation, is that ultimately embracing it all, like really all parts, and being really compassionate with ourselves first, so that way we can be more compassionate and loving with other people. So thank you.
Can I
Yes,
say
so
one
much.
more thing? Can I say
Yeah.
one more thing?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I know we
Yeah,
need.
no, I love it. I love it.
Okay.
And if you have any parting remarks or anything else you would love to share, we would
Go
love
for it. Yeah.
Okay, great. The thing I wanted to say is this part of us that tells us we didn't do a good enough job, we have to do differently, we have to work harder, we have to all that stuff. It's if it does motivate you and you think that's why you're successful, it's actually not true. I liken it to the horse and the jockey. You know, like the horse is the horse. We are capable of running, and sometimes having a taskmaster part of us can push us a little, but that's not sustainable.
Right.
So I'm asking you to trust your natural self, because your natural self is actually the one who gets it done. So again, the inner bonding is going to have lots of different ways of moving this false part off of you, so that you can have joy, so that you can create out of love, like we said, and out of appreciation and generosity, and not out of have to and oh my gosh, I have to prove myself, and fear and anxiety, because that will run your system down. That is not loving.
Right.
100%. Amazing. So excited to share the free gift with the audience as well. You guys have heard it. And thank you again so much for what you do and coming on and sharing your wisdom, and also, yes, sharing what it's like to start the journey and where to begin. And all of that is really important because all of us can use the resources. So thank you again for everything, for your time today, Stel, and we really appreciate your wisdom and knowledge today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you very
Thank
much.
you. It was
Yeah.
a pleasure.
Take care.
Yes, you too.
Okay.